Hello and welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. Welcome to my video on a look back at my shows that I was excited for in 2023 and not excited for. So at the beginning of this year in January, I went through three shows that I was not at all excited for in 2023, but I was going to watch them anyway because they're part of franchises that I follow. And then also five shows that I was really excited for. So I'm here to review them and tell you how it turned out. And I'm going to do so by going through each of the shows and giving them a plus or a minus based on whether they met or exceeded my expectations. They would get a plus, or they did not meet my expectations and would get a minus. Or in the case of the shows I was not excited for, it would be met my low expectations or were below them. So shows that I wasn't excited for have to exceed in order to get a plus. But there's only one of those. So let me just go ahead and get into what we're doing here. So I picked three shows that I wasn't excited for in 2023 that I was going to watch. Two of them didn't even come on in 2023. I give up. I just throw my hands in the air. There was one in 2022 that I picked that I was excited for that didn't come out. I ended up spilling it over to 2023. But now, two of the three that I picked as not excited for didn't even come out in 2023. So let me just talk about those pretty quickly before I dive in and get to the one show that did actually come on in 2023 that I said I wasn't excited for. So the first of those that didn't actually come on was Star Wars Skeleton Key. I had heard it was supposed to be out late in 2023. And now I'm hearing late 2024. So like a year later than I originally heard. And you know what? I'm quite okay with this. I'm still not excited about Jude Law and a bunch of kids. So like, I am still not excited about it. So whatever. But anyway, I cannot give a plus or minus to it since it didn't even come on. And the other one was the Marvel show Ironheart. Didn't come out, and quite frankly, I don't know if that show is even going to be made anymore. I have not heard anything about it in a while, so I am wondering if it's got the axe. I know that Marvel is kind of rethinking things, regrouping, reorganizing, which they should. I don't agree with the whole panicking like Marvel is dead and oh Marvel the MCU's dead and stick a fork in it and all that bullshit. That's nonsense. But I do think Kevin Feige and the creative team need to kind of reorganize, regroup, maybe get rid of things they don't need, maybe spread things out more, and that's looks like what they're doing. And I think that's why Ironheart didn't come on in 2023, and I think there's like a chance it never comes on, and I am totally okay with it. Other than the fact that it has good representation, it's going to star a young African American woman, which is great representation. Other than that, I didn't really see a great purpose for the show, and representation is more meaningful if the show is good. I think representation means less if it's a mediocre show with mediocre writing and nobody watches it. So representation is good, but only if it's a good show and people watch it. And I don't think that's what Ironheart was going to be. I think it was going to be mediocre and no one was going to watch it. So I am totally fine if they don't ever have Ironheart. That is totally fine with me. So that leaves me with just one show that I said I wasn't excited for that did come on in 2023. So let me go ahead and dive into that. And then on the other side of that, I'll be back and I'll talk a little bit about what you can expect in the shows, the five shows that I was excited for 2023. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about the one that I wasn't excited for and see how it did. So the one show out of the three that I picked that I wasn't excited for that did actually come on in 2023 was Star Trek Picard Season 3, and I really had extraordinarily low expectations for this season because of how bad season 2 was. My theory was if they can ruin Q and Guinan, they're probably going to ruin the entire Next Generation cast. So let's see how it did. If it gets a minus, that means that it met my extremely low expectations for it and it sucked. If it gets a plus, it cleared that very low bar. And I am going to give this Picard Season 3 a plus. So this was a really low bar to clear, as I said, because I had such low expectations. The odds were really in the favor of Picard Season 3 to beat my really, really low expectations, and it did. It's not the best. It wasn't perfect. I ended up giving this an 8 out of 10, and some might consider that generous. There were a lot of really great episodes, especially in the first half of the season. I think it went downhill at the end, and the whole Borg Queen bullshit they shouldn't have done. They abandoned the changelings. But even with all that, great character interactions. Loved some of the reunions. Loved the Picard and Crusher scenes, the Troy and Riker scenes, the Riker and Worf scenes. I love 7 of 9 in this. Worf and Rappy. There was a lot of good character interactions. The return of Ro. All that stuff was great. So despite its flaws, Picard Season 3 is a definite plus because it far exceeded my very, very low expectations. All right, moving on now to the 5 shows that I said I was excited for 2023, and all 5 of them did actually come on, although one of them was originally on my list for 2022, and then it didn't come out until 2023, but it did. They're all there, so I can give you my pluses and minuses for all 5 of them. But before I do that, I just want to make this clear. Just because the show gets a minus doesn't mean that I hate it or anything like that. In fact, I don't hate any of these seasons that I'm about to go over. I think there's one of them that's mediocre. But there's like 1 or 2 that I'm going to give minuses to that I still really liked and still make my top 10 best show of the year list, which is a video that I will do at the end of the year or in a few weeks from now. I'll go through my top 10, and there's a couple shows on here that got a minus, but will still be in my top 10. And the reason that is because when I do my top 10 best shows list, I'm comparing each show to other shows in the year 2023. In this video, on this list, I am comparing each show to my own expectations that I had for it going into it. So there's a big difference. So in a couple of these cases, I still like the show. It still makes my top 10, but I was hoping and expecting it to be even higher in my top 10. Like I was expecting it to be top 3 material, and it's not top 3, it's top 10. So that's the difference. So just because the show gets a minus doesn't mean that I didn't like it. It just means that it didn't meet my expectations. So with that out of the way, let me go ahead and go through those 5 shows and let you know how they did for me. So the first show that I said I was excited for in 2023 was The Wheel of Time Season 2, and this is that holdover from 2022. I originally had it in my most excited for 2022 list, and it didn't come out until 2023. So now I finally get to talk about it after 2 years, and after all that waiting and anticipation and reading the book material and getting excited for it, what did this season get? Well, I'll tell you. This show was a definite plus for 2023. It was well worth the wait, and I am glad that I was able to go back and reread some of the source material. I surpassed where the story was in the show. I read to the end of book 3, currently still somewhere in the middle of book 4, and this season primarily covers book 2 of the series. And I thought it was a great adaptation, especially considering where season 1 left off. They made some really huge changes, and they were somehow able to reel it back in and kind of get back on track. So they're basically more or less where the story is in the books at this point. And what I really loved about it compared to the books is how it really streamlined the story. Like the character of Lamphere in the books, like they take their sweet ass time developing the character to the point where I was like, what is the point of this character? And they get right to the point here. There are some flaws, like I'm sure people who didn't read the books didn't understand who all those dudes were at the beginning who were hanging out with Perrin, because I didn't think those characters got developed very well in the show. But overall, I thought it was an excellent adaptation, and even pulling back and not even thinking it was an adaptation, I thought it was a great show, a great season. I personally loved the finale. I thought it was one of the strongest finales I've seen in a while. I feel like I'm one of the only people who think that. A lot of people complained about the finale. I thought it was great. I thought overall this was a great season, and it was definitely worth the wait, and a definite plus from me. Next show that I said I was excited for in 2023 is The Mandalorian Season 3. Now, I said I was excited for it despite the fact that I found Seasons 1 and 2 to be vastly overrated and mostly mediocre seasons, but I thought this time it's going to be different because they are going to focus on the Mandalorian story and the Darksaber and the Bo-Katan of it all, and who's going to be the leader of Mandalore and all that sort of thing. And I thought it was going to be great, so I was excited for it. But let's see how it did for me. So yeah, this was a minus. I'm sure you could tell by my tone a second ago. If you don't remember what I said in my review earlier this year, more mediocrity from The Mandalorian. Some will say that this is the worst season of The Mandalorian, and those people overrate the first two seasons. I think they're kind of all on par with each other, all bunch of mediocrity. I think the one episode that best represents what was wrong with this season was the one with Jack Black and Lizzo in it, and it's not because they were in it. I don't care about that. That's fine that they were there. My problem was they focused on the wrong thing. That is all about Mandalorian Season 3, and The Mandalorian in general. That is its problem. It focuses on the wrong thing. And that particular episode, they focused on this ridiculous cartoonish Scooby-Doo storyline where Christopher Lloyd at the end may as well have said, "And I would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for you pesky Mandalorians and your dog." And yet, all along, you had that great Mandalorian storyline sitting right there. It was story gold. It was right there for the taking. The whole thing with Bo-Katan and that dude who used to work for her and fighting for the Darksaber and all that stuff. Such great story potential that was just tacked on as a 5-second little meaningless thing at the end. And it should have been all about that instead of a stupid Scooby-Doo storyline. And that is why The Mandalorian gets a minus, and that's why it failed as a season, because it focused on the wrong things. Now that said, I still gave it a 7 out of 10. I still consider it overall to be a mediocre show. I just think there were still some really great things. When they did focus on the Mandalorian stuff, it was really good. Stuff that I loved about it. Grogu, of course, is always great, so this didn't suck. It was mediocre, but definitely far beneath my expectations, where I thought maybe The Mandalorian might actually become a good show for once, but now it continues to be as mediocre as always. Moving on to the next show I was excited for in 2023, staying within the Star Wars universe, Star Wars Ahsoka Season 1. So I wasn't sure if this one met my expectations, so I had to think carefully on it. I had to review the tapes, as it were. I went back and watched the original video that I made and listened carefully to what I said about my expectations for Star Wars Ahsoka. And in doing so, I have no choice but to do this. So this one was kind of the opposite of that Star Trek Picard season I was talking about earlier, where my expectations were so low that it would have been super easy, barely an inconvenience, for that show to surpass them. Here, my expectations were so unreasonably high that it would have been damn near impossible for this show to meet those expectations. So I went back and listened to what I said, and I said that this is the show by far that I am most excited for coming out in 2023 more than anything else. Therefore, I was expecting this to be the best show of 2023, and it wasn't. Maybe unfair to hold it to those expectations, but those are the expectations that I had. It did not meet those expectations. It is not the best show of 2023, although this is one of the shows I was referring to earlier that does still make my top 10, is still good. I gave it an 8.5 rating. Episodes 4 and 5 actually are the best episodes of live action Star Wars, but the rest of the show doesn't quite live up to that, especially the finale. The finale was disappointing. The other thing that I said about the show in my original video was that I was really excited because it was basically a live action sequel to Rebels, and it was not the same quality as Rebels. So episodes 4 and 5 were, but most of the rest of the show was not, even though it was still really good. This will be in my top 10. This is one of those shows I was talking about. I loved it. You'll see it in my top 10. But for my unreasonable expectations to be the best show of 2023, it didn't make that. So it ends up with a minus. But I'll talk about it again at the end of the year, the end of this month, actually, when I do my top 10 best shows of 2023. So the next show I was excited for in 2023 was Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4. And the expectations that I had for Season 4 is that it would be even better than Season 3, which would make it one of the best seasons of Star Trek, honestly, definitely of modern Trek, because I felt that each season of Lower Decks got better than the previous season. So I was like, well, if they do that again in Season 4, it's going to be amazing. So let me tell you if Season 4 of Lower Decks met my expectations. Unfortunately, yes, it does get a minus. Did not quite meet my expectations. It was close. I have Season 3 of Lower Decks ranked slightly higher than Season 4, even though I actually gave both of them a 9 out of 10. We're talking about decimal points. Like, this is probably like an 8.9 rounded up to a 9, and Season 3 is probably like a 9.3. So we're talking about really, really close. But that was my expectation, that this would not be just slightly not as good as Season 3, but my expectation was that it would be better than Season 3, and for me personally, it was not. This had no Hear All, Trust Nothing in it. It had no episode that really blew me away. Or Crisis Point 2 from Season 3 also was another 10 out of 10 episode. Reflections, a 9.5 out of 10 episode from Season 3. Although Season 3 did have my least favorite episode of the series, it had so many of the best episodes of the series, and for me, Season 4 had more mediocrity, although it also had some great stuff in it as well. Just was not quite as good as Season 3. So because that was my expectation, to be better than Season 3, again, like Ahsoka, maybe an unreasonable expectation, but because that was my expectation, it has to get a minus. This is another show like Ahsoka that is in my top 10. In fact, I think it's probably going to be pretty high up. It might even be my top 5. I'm not sure yet, but it's up there. But it didn't quite meet my expectations, so it has to get a minus. Okay, let's get into the final show that I said I was excited for going into 2023, and that is Loki Season 2. Possibly the only Marvel Disney Plus show that I ever got really excited for in 2023, especially since the one that I picked for 2022, which was She-Hulk, was definitely a minus. So I kind of got a little franchise fatigue with Marvel, and yet I was still super excited for this show. So how did it do for me? Let me tell you. Yeah, let's get another plus up in here. I feel like I've just given 3 minuses in a row. Time for another plus, and this is a big, big plus because this far exceeded my expectations. I actually had no expectations that this would necessarily be better than Loki season 1, and you'll hear mixed opinions on this, but for me personally, this was definitely better than season 1. The ending of episode 4 blew my mind right out of my head, and then episode 5 had this really powerful character moment between Loki and Sylvie that really solidified Loki's character development and made him one of the most interesting characters in the entire MCU. And then that finale again blew my mind right the fuck out of my head. So this was better than Ahsoka, I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell you exactly where it's going to fall in my top 10, but it's going to be high up. It's going to be up there. This was certainly one of the better shows in the year 2023, which I was not expecting it to be. So by far exceeds my expectations. Big, big plus for Loki season 2. Okay, thank you so much for joining me as I reviewed the shows that I was excited for and not excited for in 2023. This will be the last of one of these types of videos that I will do, and mainly because I'm not really doing much on my channel next year, but even if I was going to continue doing regular content, I don't think I would do one of these anymore because of the fact that I don't know what shows are coming out in what year. They say a show is going to come out in a certain year and then it doesn't, so I just kind of give up on that. So I don't think I would do this video, even if I wasn't kind of slowing down operations on my channel in 2024. So thanks for joining me, and I have more end of the year activities coming. Next week I have my #1 all-time favorite Star Trek episode in my Star Trek Top 100. I'm finally reaching the #1. That is next week. Right now, you can go watch the picture clue video for my #1 in the Star Trek Top 100. That's next week will be the #1. Then the week after that, I will be dropping my video for my awards of 2023. So I will do the most overrated show, most underrated show, and the worst show, all in 2023. So that's all going to be in one video on the 22nd. And then the week after that, the aforementioned top 10 best TV shows of 2023 video will be out there for you. So please subscribe if you have not already. And I shall see you really soon. Goodbye.